And good evening, distinguished guests, CARTA fellows and facilitators. I think we should start, and we have a sufficient number of attendees. And more importantly, our lecturer is here. I welcome you to our annual CARTA public lecture. This is a feature of our CARTA Joint Advanced Seminar 3, which has started since the inception of CARTA. For those who are visitors or who have not been with us at CARTA, CARTA is the Consortium for Advanced Research and Training in Africa and specialized in training PhD. The main objective is to produce a critical mass of researchers in and for Africa in the area of public and population health. This public lecture usually deals with issues in public and reproductive and population health. And the topic for today's lecture is the politics of vaccine distribution, implications and lessons for Africa. You will agree with me that we couldn't have found a better topic for this lecture, and it's one of the most contemporary issues and it's worthy of discussion. To do justice to this issue is our lecturer. He's a renowned academic and academician who has been involved in the politics of hello, can you, am I audible?
Yes, we are hearing you again now. You were off for some time. Can you?
Oh, okay. Maybe I should just start by saying that our topic for today is to be handled by a very renowned academician who's been involved in politics of research and academia. That's Professor Nimi Briggs. And I just want to invite Professor Akinka Omibodun, another heavyweight in the field, to introduce our lecturer. Thank you very much. Hello. This is serious.
Hello, good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope that my screen is visible. I'm hoping that my screen is visible to all participants. I want to welcome you to the 9th public lecture of the Consortium for Advanced Research Training in Africa. This lecture has been held every year for the past 9 years as part of the collaboration between CARTA and the University of Ibadan, which has had the privilege of hosting the Joint Advanced Seminar 3 of the consortium for the past 9 years. And today, our public lecture is going to be delivered by somebody that the compare of today's event has described as a heavyweight, but I think that actually may be an understatement. I've been given the task of introducing our lecturer today. Well, we are not in an in-person event where we would have asked the lecturer to stand up for a citation to be delivered, but I think it's a singular honor for me to have to do this task. Professor Nimi D Briggs is the Pro-Chancellor of the Alex Ekweme Federal University, Ndufu Alike in Ebonyi State in Nigeria. He's also the Pro-Chancellor of the Bayelsa Medical University in Yenagoa. And of course, naturally, it flows that when pro-chancellors gather, it would be in the chair. Is the chairman of the Committee of Pro-Chancellors of Federal Universities of Nigeria. Yes. So Professor Briggs, that's a portrait of him being displayed there. You can see that although is knocking on the doors of 4 scores, is still looking as young and as handsome as ever. Professor Nimi Briggs is Professor Emeritus of Obstetrics and Gynecology at the University of Port Harcourt in Nigeria, having been appointed to that position in 2012. And of course, he will occupy that position for life. He's an academic and professional of great distinction. He's an alumnus of the University of Lagos, where he obtained both the MBBS degree and proceeded MD with a doctoral thesis on operative vaginal deliveries. He had a specialist training in obstetrics and gynecology in the United Kingdom and is a fellow of the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists of the UK. He is a quintessential university administrator. He has occupied numerous posts in university administration. We cannot mention them all, but suffice it to say that he is the former Vice Chancellor of the University of Port Harcourt. He occupied that position on 2 occasions, first between 1995 and 1996 when he was in acting capacity, and then between 2000 and 2005, when he was the substantive Vice Chancellor. He's also the former Pro-Chancellor and Chairman of Council of the Federal University, Lokoja, Nigeria. It was from that position that he moved to his present position as Pro-Chancellor of the Alex Ekweme Federal University, Ndufu-Alike, in 2020. And is also the Foundation Pro-Chancellor of the Bayelsa Medical University in Yenagoa and the chairman of the Committee of Pro-Chancellors in Nigeria. So you can see he's occupied a central position in university administration, but he's also experienced in other spheres. He's been a seasoned administrator in various other spheres. He's been the chairman. In fact, he's still the chairman of the board of the Sports Institute of the University of Port Harcourt. He is a former chairman of the Rivers State Economic Advisory Council. He is a former chairman of the board of management of the University of Benin Teaching Hospital. And prior to that, he was chairman of the board of the National Hospital in Abuja, Nigeria. And he's also had some brushes with politics, although he's not a partisan politician, but is the former chairman of the Rivers State Independent Electoral Commission, charged with the task of conducting free and fair elections for the population of Rivers State, a position in which he distinguished himself. He is an affiliate of several distinguished bodies, and I'll just mention a few of them. And is not just a fellow of the National Postgraduate Medical College of Nigeria in the Faculty of Obstetrics and Gynecology, but is a distinguished fellow of the college. He's been specially honored in that regard for his numerous contributions. He's a fellow of the West African College of Surgeons. He occupies several positions in our college, but we don't have time for all those details. He's a fellow of the Nigerian Academy of Science, the fellow of the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists of the UK. He's a fellow of the Nigerian Academy of Science and of the Academy of Medicine Specialties of Nigeria. He's had numerous awards. He's had the Nigerian National Award of Officer of the Order of the Niger, OON. He's also been awarded the prestigious Hallmark of Labor for excellence in education. He's a Knight of the Order of St. Christopher in the Church of Nigeria Anglican Communion. And he's had numerous other awards and honors, including having a hospital in Port Harcourt and some halls of residence at the Rivers State University and the Bayelsa Medical University named for him. He will be talking to us today about COVID-19. The brief we gave him was to talk about higher education and health in Africa, and he's picked a topic that is what you can call really topical, is of contemporary paramount importance, and that's COVID-19, the pandemic. And so it's my pleasure to call on Professor Nimi D Briggs, ON, FAS, FRCOG, to talk to us about COVID-19 pandemic, the politics of vaccine distribution, implications, and lessons for Africa. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and good morning, everybody. Let me start by thanking my president for that introduction. What he didn't tell us is that he's my president, the former president of the West African College of Surgeons. Go to the very beginning. They put it on the slideshow. Go on. Just 1 minute. Go on. Then no, go on. That's it. Right. No, the first one, right. When President Omigodu, as we call him, invited me to deliver this lecture, he made it clear to me that the option of choosing the title was mine, but that I should link the topic to issues on funding of higher education, research, and health population in Nigeria and other countries in Africa. Right, when I looked at it, that was in September, I thought that any of the issues that is currently trending would sell. Any of the issues currently trending, and there are many. COVID-19 pandemic, the climate change issue, which the COP26 has just ended. What we should do, how we should source for energy. Should we completely abrogate fossil energy, or should we reduce it? Renewable forms of energy, refugees and migrants. And of course, if you are in Africa, with all these difficulties with wars or ending wars, banditry, insecurity, kidnapping, poverty and hunger, deprivation, all these are issues that you can pick from, I was just contemplating all that when the president of our country, His Excellency Muhammadu Buhari, addressed the country on the 61st anniversary of our nation's independence. And his talk was numbered. And on number 11, he had this to say: I will take this opportunity to remind the global community that the current state of access to COVID-19 vaccines is unacceptable. We cannot afford a situation where a handful of countries keep the global vaccine supply to themselves at the expense of other nations. Then he went on to lay out Nigeria's plan for COVID-19 as we recover, hopefully, from the disease. Now that set me thinking, and I thought that should be where I should anchor my thought. So I then decided to choose this topic, which our president has eloquently elucidated on. COVID-19 pandemic, the politics of vaccine distribution, lessons and implications for Africa. I have to look at the shenanigans, the difficulties, the nuances associated with vaccine distribution as far as COVID-19 is concerned. And as you know, this is the 9th in the series, as Professor Obigodo told us, which I congratulate the University of Ibadan for keeping up to this series very satisfactorily. Immediately, one would like to say that Africa cannot continue to rely on others for the solution of our problems. That the solution, Africans must take their own destiny by their own hands and find ways and means to solve their own problems. If you look at Africa, the malady of grinding poverty, pangs of hunger from food shortages, the sickening military adventurism, the military drop, come into our politics at the drop of the heart, devastations and death from endless wars, insecurity, banditry, and much more. Our problems seem to be growing And it is only us who can afford to find the solution to these problems. And until this is done, Africa cannot sufficiently and satisfactorily drive its development and provide for its people the prosperous and egalitarian society that is envisaged in the Sustainable Development Goals and in the continent's most aspirational document known as Agenda 2063. And I want to recommend that Agenda 2063 to all of you, my colleagues, to try. All Africans should find time to read that Agenda 2063. It's a very important document that lays out for all Africans what we should do to get our continent to where it should be. Accordingly, in today's lecture, I will argue that achieving self-reliance, an important avenue for achieving self-reliance in vaccine production, which is what we want to do, and distribution, as well as in many other spheres of societal advancement, is for African countries to invest heavily in research and innovation that address and provide solutions to challenges associated with national development. So in the body of the lecture, I will look at the immune response, which is the response we have in us that is able to utilize vaccines that we take in to prevent diseases. That is known as immune response. I'll look at the science of vaccination and vaccine production. We'll look at vaccines and morbidity and mortality in Africa. What have vaccines done to morbidity and mortality in Africa? Then we'll go to COVID-19, its genesis, mortality and morbidity, the related issue of vaccine production, the unfair distribution, which negates the concept of COVID-19 vaccine being a global common good. We look at the implications of this skewed distribution of vaccines to Africa, and then some measures that are being taken both in Africa and in Nigeria to address such inequity, and also to situate research and innovation as a cornerstone of national development. And of course, I will conclude by congratulating our CARTA fellows. So let's start. Let's look at the immune response. The immune response is a defensive response, a defensive mechanism against invaders. It's a complex process involving several tissues, cells, and systems, and it is based on the recognition of surface antigens on the invading organisms. These antigens are known as proteins, and they're recognized by various cells, but particularly the white, some aspects of the white blood cells, particularly the T lymphocytes and the B lymphocytes, which are manufactured in the bone marrow and then spread to various organs that, as indicated at the time of the lymph node display, where they are stored. And there they form killer cells, suppressor cells, helper cells, and antibodies. And secondly, they do something very important also. They form memory banks for microbes, i.e., once a microbe has attacked a body, and this system is able to overcome that microbe, it stores the memory, so that when that microbe comes back or in a stronger form, it is able to deal with it. And then, of course, this system is always triggered by the introduction of lethal viruses that triggers the immune response. Right now, I am aware that a lot of us in our various homes will remember instances in which people in our environment have done one thing or the other to remind us that there is native intelligence in this issue of immune response. Societies are known in which some lactating mothers have some venom extracted from snakes, rubbed onto their breasts, and then the babies are fed with that breast, so that the babies get immunized, as it were, to snake bites. So ultimately, in an area where there's plenty of snake bites and the snakes bite them, you find that nothing happens to them. And this is true of all the little organisms that native intelligence does exist. But then, the science of this vaccination and immunization is put down to one Englishman called Edward Jenner, who lived from 1749 to 1829. Now, Jenner's work had to do with this important disease on our top left here. Sorry, my pointer is not working, but top left there, you can find a little baby whose face is completely covered with smallpox. I have a feeling that a lot of the people listening to me today may not have seen a case of smallpox. I saw one as a medical student in my last year in medical school, and that was 1969. And of course, the patient died. It is a disease you don't want to see a patient with. Now, what Edward Jenner did was that he noticed that there was a disease similar to smallpox, but which occurred in cows. That disease was very similar to smallpox in the sense that pustules were also formed. But the cows were not as sick with that disease as human beings were with smallpox. So he felt that that disease must have some characteristics with smallpox. Also, he noticed that maids that were tending to these cows, if they had that cowpox and then subsequently they had smallpox, they neither died nor did they suffer any serious illness. So he felt that there was something in the cowpox that was being transferred, that could be transferred, that would protect human beings. And he worked it out. He now took the stories that he did it with his own son, but I don't know about that. But then he took aspects of the cowpox and scratched the skin of his son or whoever, one little boy. And after a couple of weeks, he now introduced smallpox into that baby. And he discovered that the baby was not sick, just a small cold or whatever, the baby didn't die or whatever. And then he was able to establish that there is something in the cowpox that prevented smallpox. So if you look at this illustration we have here now, the cowpox in this case has been used as an antigen and introduced into the body of this gentleman or lady, and immune response has been invoked in that body. He has formed neutralizing antibodies or whatever ways he prepared to neutralize, and then he is now able to fight the pathogen, which is smallpox, when smallpox comes. And this is what is known as the immune response. So the first successful antigen that was used in the world was cowpox. So this is cowpox, and then the science of immunology and vaccination. And it was in 1798 that Edward Jenner was able to illustrate this quite satisfactorily. And from that great work, we have a number of things which we now utilize. Edward Jenner described smallpox as they described cowpox as the smallpox of cows, to tell you the relationship between the two. And as you know, it is from those things that he did that we have our words that we. Vaca is a Latin for cow, we have vaccine from it. Vaccinia is a Latin for cowpox, we have vaccination. And of course, the entire science of immunology is an offspring of the immune response, be it the human response associated with the immune system against invading pathogens. Right? How well are vaccinations done in Africa? Vaccinations have done very well in Africa, and we now have in Africa, every year we have an African vaccination week. And the one for this year was held between 24th and 30th of April. And the logo, the slogan was, "Vaccines bring us closer." And then it was indicated that we celebrated tremendous contribution vaccines have made in preventing morbidity and mortality in Africa. Vaccines have prevented the death of many children in Africa. As we all know, some information is there about the deaths. During that week, two very distinguished Africans spoke to us. One was Dr. Moeto, and then also Her Excellency Amira Mohammed. Dr. Moeto, as you know, is the WHO Director for Africa, WHO Regional Director for Africa. And then Her Excellency Mohammed is the Commissioner of Health at the AU Commission. And they spoke to us, assuring us, telling us that vaccines fight diseases. They save lives, and they bring us closer to a healthier, safer, and prosperous future. And they eulogize the great strides that vaccines have made in Africa. Just to collaborate what they have said, this is smallpox once again. And if you look at this child, if you remember the entire, after Edward Jenner's work, the World Health Organization decided that they would embark on a procedure to eradicate smallpox completely from the surface of the earth. And there were two campaigns which resulted eventually in the eradication of smallpox in 1980. And the last post of smallpox in the world was in Africa, in Somalia. And you can imagine what good that has done to mankind, particularly to us as Africans. And again, this is that of polio. And then just way back, only recently, in 2012, Nigeria accounted for more than 50% of cases of polio worldwide. And now in 2020, we are happy that polio has been eradicated in Nigeria, and polio is on its way out completely in the world. Maybe just left, I think Pakistan is also out now. We are probably just left with Afghanistan. Then polio will also be eradicated completely from the earth. This was what prompted ministers when they met between the 24th and 25th of February in Addis on vaccinations in Africa to say that the universal access to immunization should be a cornerstone for health and development in Africa. And they signal their commitment to continued investment in immunization programs as a means of providing a healthy future for all the people of the continent of Africa. Now let's look at vaccine production in Africa. Now, with that level of commitment as was given by the ministers at that meeting, and also the amount of the crushing burden of vaccine-preventable diseases that we have in Africa, you would have thought that Africa would be a very major hub for vaccine production. But sadly, it is not. Africa currently having a population of about 1.34 billion persons, which is about 14% of the world's population, has only 0.1% of the world vaccine production, which means that the bulk of the vaccines used in Africa is manufactured outside Africa and is bought or donated to Africans. Now, this is unsatisfactory. This is unsatisfactory. Taking into consideration the large burden of vaccine-preventable diseases that we have. Right. Now, the main problem with our inability to make the vaccines in Africa is infrastructural difficulties. We don't seem to have sufficient infrastructure that will take the manufacture of vaccines from point A to the point of completion. These are a few centers in Africa, a few countries in Africa, where some form of infrastructure exists to handle some aspects of the vaccine manufacture. Senegal, South Africa, Ethiopia, Egypt, and of course, Tunisia. Right. Now, with respect to the COVID-19 vaccine, again, these are some countries where some activities, again, not the major aspect of the activities, the packing, the bottling, labeling, and all that is being held in some countries in Morocco, Nigeria, in Senegal, in South Africa again, and of course in Egypt. And some of these big pharmaceutical companies are beginning to hold discussions with these countries about how to initiate some form of vaccines, some aspects of the COVID-19 vaccine production. Such a talk is going on with Nigeria. As you know, Nigeria is quite a large country, over 200 million persons. And, this is on for now. Right, so what are the current realities with respect to this vaccine production in Africa? Well, the manufacturers in Africa, most manufacturers in Africa manufacturing a few things in those countries do not incorporate vaccine production in their lines due to poor infrastructure. There are mostly the few places that have to do with vaccines end up with just the packaging and delivery. Vaccines are mainly supplied through the Global Alliance for Vaccine and Immunization and UNICEF. Those two organizations are the main organizations that supply vaccines to us in Africa. Only few countries purchase enough because they have to be bought or given as gifts. Most countries are unable to purchase the amount they require to satisfactorily immunize against vaccine-preventable diseases. Nigeria as a country is rich in manpower, very, very rich in manpower, but poor in infrastructure. And this is where we are in Nigeria because of our poverty in the infrastructure. We're able to do this, which we have the manpower for. And that is an area Nigeria needs to look into. Does not currently manufacture any drug. We receive the manufactured drugs up to a point and then complete the processing here in the country. It imports active pharmaceutical ingredients, which it now completes. Of course, we have a very good lab in Yaba, which had fallen into some form of disrepute. But I visited that lab recently, and I do know that quite a lot of work is going on in that lab. And we're hoping that the time won't be too long when that laboratory will be utilized and ready to get back into vaccine activities. This is a slide of some of the big companies that are involved in vaccine productions. As you can see, we in Africa are just consumers. And of course, the market in vaccine production, coronavirus production, is a big market. It's anticipated to reach more than 75 billion by the end of 2021. And Africa is not participating in that huge economy. It's not participating in that huge economy. Right. So now let's look at COVID-19, where it came from, morbidity and mortality, and then social and economic consequences. Right. This virus, COVID-19, as we know, is an RNA virus, the acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus. It is very similar to the SARS virus that we had in 2003, which created it wasn't too bad, but then some difficulties up in Europe. Again, down in the south here, we didn't have much of it. Fortunately, in the sense, I say fortunate in the sense that this SARS virus at that time gave a lot of information, established a lot of infrastructure, which now became beneficial when COVID-19 actually came. So when COVID-19 hit the world and hit Africa, this was the situation in which Africa found itself. The health services were in poor shape. The infrastructure was in poor shape. Economies were bad. And then manufacturing base was also poor. So you can imagine, you can see that we were all ready for the predictions that were given in those days that there will be bodies all over the streets. But thank God that has not happened to that extent in Africa. And then we are still hoping and praying that it never gets to that. Then, of course, the issues of where it arose, it is generally believed that this arose from in China, this is zoonotic disease from bats. But now, currently, the human-to-human transmission is very well established. And it's transmitted through respiratory droplets, and one infected person can infect 2 to 4 persons. Right. If we go on, now COVID-19 started towards the end of 2019. That's why it is called COVID-19, 2019. So by the time we now got into the year 2020, the disease was well established. And we now had a Pandora of all manner of names, which we had used hitherto, but not as commonly as we use them. You remember the issue of an epidemic first came in, then a pandemic now came in. Then we had words like sentences like stay at home, you should socially distance yourself. Is it a social distance? Is it a physical distance? There's complete lockdown, whatever lockdown meant. Then we have to purchase palliatives, all sorts. And then if you come to Africa, you want to remember that the index case of Africa, the first case that Africa received, I think it was in Egypt. And that was on the 14th of February in 2020. And then Nigeria had its own first case on the 27th of February 2020. On both instances, the index cases were from travelers coming from Europe that brought the disease into Africa. And as you know, North Africa is very close. It's only the Mediterranean Sea that separates North Africa from Southern Europe. So it's not surprising that that did happen. Right. Now, 2020, which was a lost year for virtually the entire world. And Nigerians will remember that 2020 was expected to be the golden year of Nigeria. And then golden year because a vision called Vision 2020 had been thought of, had been conceived in the year 2006, and it was launched in 2009. That vision was that by 2020, Nigeria would be one of the 20 largest economies in the world. It will be able to consolidate its leadership role in Africa and establish itself as a significant player in the global economic and political arena. Oh, of course, we don't need a soothsayer to tell us that none of this happened. Sadly, 2020 was lost to COVID, and we are all struggling to get back. Right, now, morbidity and mortality. What has happened so far is that as of today, this virus has infected more than 240 million people in the whole world, and more than 5 million of them have died. Many have recovered from that. From those figures, you would agree that many recovered and recovered fully. In fact, I did have COVID, and then fortunately, I recovered very, very fully in full health But a few persons recovered with what was described as, what is now described as long COVID, where they still have complications going on for quite a long time. Fortunately and happily, quite a number of people don't. I don't. I feel very strong, and thank God I recovered completely. All countries are affected, but these countries here, United States of America, Brazil, and India, are where the death tolls have been most pronounced. Now, regarding the social implications, the COVID-19 disrupted human activity tremendously. If you remember, we talked about these words, isolation, lockdown, social distancing, masking. These are things that human nature was not used to. Human nature was, we were freelancing, we were mixing with ourselves. And then, of course, the travel restrictions, the amount of damage travel restrictions made to human society was tremendous. And then our health systems collapsed. And then they had a knock-on effect on other diseases, including massive drops in immunization rates, let alone the other issues that I've put on the picture here. The GDPs of all economies dropped in the year 2020. And of course, it had a knock-on effect on education, investment, and what have you. Even in the maternal health, COVID-19 had its own difficulties. Right. Now, this is just to show us that at that 2020, at the peak of the pandemic, between April, March, May, June, thereabout, mankind retracted so much from the earth that the animals took over the streets. This is a street somewhere in Europe being taken over by monkeys, and showing you that we left the earth as it were to lock up ourselves in our various rooms. Good. Now, COVID-19, yes, we've talked about a lot of the setback it did. But it's also gave us opportunities to think afresh. So we say you should seek for the opportunities. And we have here the COVID-19 pandemic has likewise to the disruption it has given to us, has likewise encouraged tremendous innovations resulting in easier, cheaper, quicker, and more efficient ways of doing many things, especially in the area of service delivery. And as far as service delivery is concerned, the open and distance learning has gained most from this. A lot of universities now deliver a lot of their lectures online. And this is as a result of COVID really pushing us to do this. And even this lecture, before that, this is a number of institutions have established virtual institutions which are open to people across the board, from wherever. This lecture we're giving now can be accessed people in Toronto, people in New York, or wherever. That's what COVID-19 has done for us. And only recently, the National Universities Commission in my country here established a virtual institute for capacity building in higher education. And in October 2021, 445 senior academics from Burundi, from Ghana, from Malawi, vice chancellors, and all heads of institutions, they graduated virtually from this program. Now, but for COVID, can you imagine 445 senior academics traveling from their various countries to come to Nigeria for a course like that? It would have been very difficult. This is the lecture we're having today. And as I'm saying, I'm sitting down in the comfort of my own room here, quite relaxed. And all of you are listening to me from various parts of the world. Some of you may be lying on your beds, or even you could even be listening to me in the toilet or whatever. So this is what COVID-19 has done for us. COVID-19 has also enhanced safety nets and given us a drive towards a more equitable society. Good. Now, if we look at it, we say so far, many safety nets have been implemented, and these are some of the safety nets: improved access to essential services, for the social net, tax relief, cash transfers, income protection policies, gender-focused policies. All in all, what it showed is that COVID-19 made us to feel better empathy and sympathy towards one another. This is a photograph coming from my own hometown called Abonima. And what happened was that at the peak of the pandemic, when people were no longer on the streets at all, the king of Abonima thought that it would be good for him to identify a couple of persons who would go around or bring their own money and buy food items. And they bought food items regularly and distributed to all in the village, all through that peak. so that because of what the king did, nobody died of hunger during that peak in Aberdeen, during that peak period when things were really, really bad. That somewhere between March and shall we say October, September, October of 2020. Good. Now, the other thing COVID-19 has done is that it has pushed public health to where it really should be. You know, if you look at the health system in many countries, you'll find that the health systems are centered around mainly healthcare systems. So I have put here that health, there are two major aspects of health, approach to health. The public health approach, then the healthcare approach. If you take the public health approach, it tells you that public health approach addresses the public issues. It is people-oriented care, people-oriented, group-oriented. It is largely preventable, largely preventive care, and it deals with the ecosystem, the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, how we dispose of our effluent organisms, fecal disposal, urine, the food we eat, the vaccines we have. It is concerned with an increase in our life, the group's life expectancy. It is never visible. It is not visible in many countries, except in times of crisis. And it is a good that COVID-19, if I permit me to use the word, sorry, excuse me for using the word good. But this is what COVID-19 has done for us. It has pushed us to think seriously about public health. And it always receives poor attention and poor funding, except when crisis comes. And then because of COVID-19 now, global philanthropy is tilted very strongly in the direction of public health. If we go to the healthcare, the medical care you and I, most people are aware of, that is patient-centered. The patient has acute appendicitis, he comes to you, excuse me, as a surgeon, you take the appendix out, he feels well, you feel happy, he goes. It is largely curative and it's easier in institutions. I have osteoarthritis, I come, you give me some analgesics, I feel better, I go away. And then it has to do with individual well-being. Could I have some water, please? Sorry, let me just have some water. You know, okay. Thank you. Good. Now, this type of healthcare we're talking about is always visible. It's in hospitals, big hospitals, we have clinics in the hospitals. And it is a pawn, usually it's a pawn for politicians. When they come, when it's time for politics, they come, they tell you, I will build a hospital. Some of them manage to build a hospital. They come during the time of the inauguration of the hospital, they bring 2 or 3 tablets of paracetamol, get young girls and ladies to dance, play drum, and that's the end. Thereafter, the empty talks then take over and nothing happens. So we are glad. I put this up because we are happy that COVID-19 has pushed public health the way it really should be in comparison to the other types of healthcare we're talking about. Now, COVID-19 vaccine to the rescue. Now, the thing is that before these 2 drugs came on, this is the one that came on more recently, a couple of weeks, just last week, by Pfizer, and then this one by Merck. Before these 2 drugs came on, there was really no satisfactory way of treating COVID-19. All we were doing was that we were resting, we were depending on hygiene. And when you talk about depending on hygiene, it took me immediately back to my primary school days, several years, more than 60 years back to my primary school days. And I remember that these were the things that we used to be told in primary schools. Make sure your fingernails and toenails are cut. Keep your teeth clean. Wash your hands regularly with soap. Wear clean clothes. Regularly cut your hair. Dispose body effluents properly. That includes the sputum and all. That's the mask we are now putting on. Keep your environment clean. Open your windows. In those days, all houses were built with a minimum of 2 doors, and the 2 doors were, opposite one another, so that cross ventilation was always in place. Living well ventilated rooms and avoid crowds. This I put down as our arsenal for the COVID-19 war. It's something that we had learned right from our primary school days. And it reminds me again of this wonderful song we used to sing each morning before we went into class. And I was thinking, where each morning before we went to class, the teacher would hold his stick, then we'll all line up and he would sing, we would sing, we are all going to our classes with hands and faces to pay great attention to what we are doing, else we shall never be happy and clever. For learning is better than silver and gold. I want to draw your attention to the first stanza. If you look at, we are going to our classes with clean hands and faces. This was what I was taught almost 70 years back. And that is what is in vogue today. So we had good training, and you can see that things were taught then are still in vogue today. Right. So when COVID-19 vaccine came into the scene, what was the expectation? The expectation was that the vaccine was going to be the silver bullet against this wonderful disease that was trying to annihilate the entire mankind. It was going to save the world's economy about $375 billion US dollars that was lost, and it will result in an equitable distribution because all mankind is affected. And if the vaccine is not equitably distributed, then its work is not being done. Protection of healthcare systems and workers was the easiest way through this vaccine to end the pandemic. Now, the production of this vaccine, generally, production of vaccines is not an easy matter, and it takes a long time. This was one of the things that the COVID-19 vaccine suffered because people were questioning. It takes 7 years, it takes 8 years, it takes 4 years, 5 years to produce a vaccine. How come this one will produce in less than 1 year? And prior to the advent of COVID-19 vaccines, the vaccine that was produced at the shortest period of time was mumps vaccine. That took 4 years. But as you remember, COVID-19 work started on COVID-19 vaccine at about the end of 2019, and by before November 2020, the vaccines had come. That less than a year. The reason is that there was a lot of work that had been done, as I said earlier, on SARS vaccine, which infrastructure was needed for this COVID-19 vaccine. And secondly, because of the nature of the pandemic, money was available and people were committed and then produced this vaccine very, very quickly. So it's the shortest time that it has taken in history to produce the vaccine of this nature. Of the many vaccines that are on, the three that are most popular, the Moderna, the Pfizer, and the AstraZeneca, these are their contents. The Moderna and the Pfizer gives an instruction through a messenger RNA for your body to produce the particular antigen, which your body now reacts with by producing antibodies. And then, of course, the AstraZeneca is carried by a viral vector. And just to remind us once again that the big manufacturing companies are not in Africa, they're in Europe and then America. The vaccines are effective, and that is why there has been a big push that you should utilize them, because the clinical, the scientific evidence available is that they're effective. They reduce morbidity and mortality in the ratio I have shown you. Of course, there are reinfections. There are reinfections, but the reinfection rate is very, very small. By reinfection, we mean candidates who had their full doses of the vaccines may still fall prey to the disease, but they're very, very low, 1 in 500 persons, and they don't generally die. They don't generally suffer serious illness unless they have important comorbidities. These important comorbidities are usually diabetes and its complications, hypertension and its complications, renal complications, hepatic complications. All these are all issues that may make vaccination seem as if it's not working in some instances. Then, of course, we now know that unvaccinated persons are many, many more times more likely to die from COVID than vaccinated persons. And this is why in some areas now, the disease is being described as the disease of the unvaccinated. That COVID, as far as the world is concerned now, it's a disease of the unvaccinated, and indicating the need for everybody to get vaccinated. So now let's talk about the distribution of the COVID-19 vaccine. And this map tells you everything, that Africa is so poorly, although the circumstances are now changing gradually because of the outcry there has been over the past couple of weeks. But this map shows you all, it shows all. And you can see how thinly Africa is supplied. Now here, this was in February 2021, whereas Europe had immunized about 50%, the entire Europe had immunized about 50%, North America 44%. If you look at Africa at that time, it was just about 3%. And African Union is expecting that by 2030, it will have vaccinated 60% of all those in Africa. And at this rate, this will be a pipe dream. This will not work at all. This is coronavirus vaccination progress in various countries in Africa. And again, this was as at June 2021. And if you look at Seychelles is the country where vaccination had gone in Africa, gone very, very far. At the time, more than well over almost 70% of their citizens had been vaccinated. And you remember that Seychelles is a country where there are plenty of immigrants because of the climate, the weather, the environment. We have a lot of people from outside who are living there. And then if you look at the rest of the countries, look at Tunisia, 4.5, Morocco is not doing bad. And then you come to West Africa where things are not quite good. Guinea, Ghana, Nigeria is less than 1 as of that time. And then Botswana and all those places. Good. Right now, this is with respect to the doses of COVID-19 vaccines that are shared, that are committed to various nations. And as you can see, the European nations and the United States and Canada, United Kingdom, they have the bulk of the commitment of these vaccines that have been produced. COVAX, which is the organization along with Gavi that sends vaccine to us in Africa, you can see that the amount that is committed to COVAX. Right. Now, it was because of this type of distribution, this type of thing that made the Director General of WHO in March, it was on the 11th of March this year that he made this statement. He said, the pandemic is progressing at two differently alarming speeds because at that time, only 2% of low-income countries had gotten their citizens vaccinated, while 50% of high-income countries had those high-income countries had been vaccinated. So, and he was making the point that the best way to protect people is to prioritize protecting everyone, not in isolation, not in clusters, not in groups, that the Northern Hemisphere will protect themselves with the exclusion of the Southern Hemisphere. The disease will find its way across, and then the problem will not be solved still. So what are the lessons and implications of this inevitable COVID-19 vaccine distribution in Africa? The lesson, as I see it, is that the lesson that emerges from the challenges of accessing sufficient vaccine supplies are that Africa must rise up and must find solutions to our own problems, not only on vaccine production, but also on other developmental issues. And of course, it is true that something is being done. The African Development Bank is trying to get vaccine hubs to be instituted in some countries in Africa. The Director General of the World Trade Organization is trying to get some countries in Africa to be vaccine hubs, production areas. In Rwanda and Senegal are going on. Nigerian government recently released a large sum of money to direct efforts to enhance COVID-19 vaccine production locally. And even on the report yesterday, further advance that is being done in this direction was also stated. And of course, if you remember that one of the things that came out of COP26 is that efforts are going to be made to convert the large solar energy that is in the desert to power mainly sub-Saharan Africa. Now, if this happens, it will solve one big problem that we have, which is have the inadequate electricity to carry out our manufacturing activities. So on the whole, something is being done, and we thank God for that. Now, with respect to Africa as a continent, Africa is taking the route of inclusiveness in their dealing with this matter, as opposed to the Europeans who are exclusive and everybody is driving, everybody for himself, hustling and amassing the vaccines in the way and extent they wish. Now, Africa has established a continental strategy for COVID-19 outbreak, which is very, very good, very good. And these are aspects of that continental strategy. We are pulling our procurement for PPEs, our procurement for drugs. We are looking for ways of obtaining debt relief so that we can plow back, hopefully, the money into dealing with COVID. We support public health initiatives and all that. These are all various ways that Africa is putting itself together to fight this situation. However, only yesterday, the president of Nigeria was speaking in Durban at the ongoing intra-African trade fair to enhance intra-African trade fair. And the point was made that Africa has now established a continental free trade area. And that if Africa can utilize that continental free trade area, it would double its intra-African trade. Doubling its intra-African trade would ensure that it can manufacture its own vaccines within Africa and sell it within Africa, because when we manufacture our own vaccines here, people won't buy them outside. They will not buy them, they won't agree. But then if we have an intra-African trade that is quite strong, we'll sell the vaccines amongst ourselves. And not only the vaccines, we sell other things. Most African countries import the food they eat. Now that shouldn't be. We should be able to, when we have arable land in Africa, we should be able to grow the food we eat, manufacture the things we need for various aspects of our life. And we are hoping. It was the president of Nigeria who yesterday at Durban said that if we are able to enhance intra-African trade, we can cut down and double our intra-African trade and our manufacture by 50% by 2030. And that's a good target to look forward to. So the thing is for us to utilize the African free trade area to maximize our trade aspects. And this is just telling us about what we already know, the centers, the areas where some form of human vaccine manufacture is going on the left, and then the one animal vaccines. Now, Nigeria is good. It has a big station in Vaughan where animal vaccines are being produced in large numbers. The African, the picture of Africa on the right-hand side, right? Now, we hear this stuff, this slide tells us that patchy global immunity will enhance mutations of the virus, which will bring new variants that will render the vaccines currently used less effective and ineffective. So it is very important that the vaccines should be made freely available to the entire world so that this pandemic can be dealt with once and for all. Now, as at October 28, 2021, Nigeria has fully immunized 1.4% of its total. Now, at the update yesterday, this has gone up to 2.9, and Nigeria is hoping to institute a general campaign for immunization for the COVID-19. And it is hoping that by the end of January, it will have immunized about 40 to 50% of its population. When you remember that what we need for herd immunity is about 70%, you still see where the 2.9 that we currently are now, how far it is from the 70%. Now, research and development in Africa. What is here I have two development paradigms. On the left-hand side, I have a paradigm of development that is based on research, innovation, and discovery. And I say that this is the paradigm that is based on a knowledge-based economy, and that knowledge-based economy is utilized to drive the development of the country. It is essentially a process by which you exploit knowledge. You don't bother so much about natural resources, but but you challenge the ability of individuals to think for themselves, to think outside the box, to find out what is required in an environment and to do something about it, about their manufacture, about their production. And that type of economy is regenerative. It institutes very minimal damage, if at all, in the environment. It is competitive and it is modern. Many developed countries are associated, utilize this model for their own development, and is better associated with green economy. Now, if you go to the right-hand side, which is what a lot of the developing countries do, and that type of development paradigm involves every day going to dig the earth, looking for gold, looking for coal, looking for petroleum products, looking for cobalt, what have you. And then you sell these unprocessed natural resources away to other nations. And it's natural resource-based economy for development. Now, it has a lot of drawbacks. The resources are finite. As you keep digging your earth, the coal that is under that earth will finish one day. It degrades the environment in a very bad manner. The endemic community unrest. Oh, you are digging my father's land. People are quarreling, people are fighting all the time. It is exploitative. You come to a place, you dig, you take all the gold, you take all the thing, or you disappear, you load them into planes and you go. And of course, it breeds corruption. This is what many countries in Africa do, and it's more associated with the carbon economy as opposed to the one on the left, which is associated with the green economy. Now, it was just yesterday, many of you would know, if you would now ask, what is the relationship between universities and development? There is no better way of answering that question than looking at the slide, the section of the slide on the right-hand side, where just yesterday, the University of Oxford published this, the final report of the economic impact of the University of Oxford on the economic impact. If you read this, you will answer that question immediately. What is the relationship between universities and development? Universities have a very important part to play in the development of the individual, in the development of the family, the society, the community, and indeed the country. And this is why, because universities play that major role, this is why even the poorest countries in the world seek to have universities. Because they know that universities can convert somebody into a very useful and competitive human being because of university education. Now, what university uses in doing that, the main tool university uses in doing that is the process of education and also research and innovation. Research and innovation uses knowledge as a currency of operation, generates awareness and insight, provides recommendation for policy foundation, creates technological products, adapts knowledge to solving problems. And then, because of all this now, for you to get your universities to do this satisfactorily, you must fund research in this area. When you go to read this Oxford document, it is through research that is able to find out the various ways it can impact on the economic impact. But sadly, academic staff in many African universities have poor research output. So now, what is let us look at the amount of the proportion of our GDPs that are spent on research. If you look at Africa, it's less than 1. Nigeria is far, far less than 1. South Africa, less than 1. Look at China. And you can then wonder why it is that such a country like China will not advance, will not make all the advance that it is making. The development you have is proportional to the amount of money you are prepared to put into research to look out for things that will enable you to pass, have a better life. Right. But Nigeria is poised to do something about its universities to improve all-round performance and also to entrench research and development as the pillar for national advancement, including the establishment of a national research and development fund. That is coming on through the TED fund, and it is on, and we believe that very soon a large sum of money will be made available for national research and development, which would now hopefully turn Nigeria's economy from one that is dependent on natural resources to one that is based on research and development. Right. So let me end up now. First of all, by conclusion, I wish to thank very, very sincerely, and I'm sure the organization would want us to thank humanity, the World Health Organization, the scientific community, the various presidents and heads of state, and the regulatory agencies that have continued to make the point that these vaccines are safe and all right. If you look at the concept, the birth, and the rollout, promotion of the vaccines have been phenomenal, to the extent that this has been described as the largest public health effort in history. In the history of mankind, there has never been an effort that has been so great. To the extent that the vaccines are now so important that the disease COVID-19 is regarded as one for those who are not vaccinated. That is not to say that very occasionally, even those who are vaccinated will not come down with the disease. But usually the outcomes are better. Right. So, but once again, humanity is about to screw up the process, just as it did with the climate crisis. But in accentuating the process, the triple climate, in accentuating in the process, the triple climate, economic, and health crisis by refusing vaccine equity as a true common good and amassing it at the expense of others. Some people are doing that. But fortunately, if you look at recent data, the distribution is slightly improving. Even in the report that was given by the Nigerian team yesterday, the point was made that the vaccines are coming in now. But because of the absence of the vaccines for so long a time, that idea, that conspiracy theory or that disbelief in the vaccine is there, which now has to be fought. I congratulate CARTA fellows and urge them to secure the future of Africa through their research, through innovation and discovery. This is the only way we can assuredly secure the future of Africa. It's through research, innovation, and discovery. The countries that have done it, that have made it, Japan, Korea, the South Korea, and all of them, they all did it through research, innovation, and discovery. And I thank CARTA, the University of Ibadan, for inviting me to deliver this lecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, our distinguished lecturer, for the 9th CARTA public lecture. We are really, really very grateful. Before I hand over back to the anchor person to take the question and answer session, I just want to recognize all the CARTA alumni that are attending this lecture. I can see quite a number of names of many of you, and the CARTA fellows. We are very, very grateful that you have decided to pursue careers in research so that you can contribute to the development of Africa. I want to welcome members of the CARTA Secretariat, Dr. Flora Karimi, Dr. Marta Vincente Crespo, Rita Karoki, Gloria Chamutai. Thank you very much for making it all possible, getting the CARTA program to continue to run as it ought. And I want to extend a special welcome to my distinguished colleague, former Vice Chancellor of the University of Ibadan, and former Honorable Minister of Health of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Isaac Adewale. Incidentally, he was the Vice Chancellor of the University of Ibadan when the first CARTA public lecture was held. We're very grateful that you are able to join up with us at this event. I want to welcome Professor Ann Nangulu, former board chairman of CARTA, who is joining us, I believe, from Nairobi, although she may be somewhere else because I know she travels around a lot. I want to welcome Professor Kayode Jadnola, the former provost of the College of Health Sciences of Obafemi Awolowo University. We have with us quite a number of people from the Nigerian Academy of Science, which is the apex organization for science in the country. We have Professor Richard Adebola. We have Professor Catherine Falade, who is also affiliated to the University of Ibadan. And we have the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Academy of Science, Dr. Donyi Odubanjo. We welcome you all. We extend gratitude to many of the faculty from the University of Ibadan who found time to attend, in spite of the fact that the university convocation is actually ongoing. Gratitude to Professor Arotiba and Professor Dosumu, former deans of dentistry, to Dr. Oladeji, Dr. Dole, Dr. Gumbode, and a number of others. I want to especially recognize the CARTA alumnus, who is the Director of Research and Innovation Management at the College of Medicine, University of Ibadan, Dr. Olumide, and Dr. Meirami from Abuja, Dr. Ikimalo from Port Harcourt. Thank you all very much. I cannot recognize everybody by name, but we are very glad you are all able to join us. So I will hand over now to Professor Lada Polayemi to anchor the question and answer session.
Thank you very much, sir. I joined Professor Ngodi in welcoming all our distinguished colleagues and teachers, our elders. The question and answer, questions should be typed in the Q&A button that is in the upper portion of the Zoom meeting page. I can only see one question for now. Professor Briggs, sir, would you like to read the question, sir? And it's in the Q&A. Joshua Kiemi is asking a question, sir.
Yeah, that's it. My question borders on the role of universities in research and development. Special thanks for initiatives such as Nigerian Research Fund, National Research Fund, recently introduced in Nigeria, and similar programs in other African countries. How can we improve the uptake of research outputs such as there is positive impact on national development? Right, okay, can I address that then? Well, you know, we are, so far, one of the problems we have in a lot of countries in Africa is that there is this dichotomy between what a university does, what industries do, what governments do. So that is one of the areas we have problems. So that there is no interface. This triple headache that is on now, in which we are trying to bring universities and industries, industrial consent, manufacturing consent, and government having to do with the policies, universities where the researches are based, and then the industries where these things are tested out, so that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing and they cooperate. We believe that that's one way that the output of research will be speeded up into ensuring that they become products which we would utilize. And that is a very important aspect of what is being done now in the National Research Foundation that is being formed. That's an important way. The other way is that the industries themselves have to know that the universities are their partners. The two sides cannot live in isolation from one another. They have to come to the universities to tell them what problems are having in industries, so that universities can avert themselves, their minds to those issues, and try and solve them, and vice versa. They try them out in the industries. So that's one way. Any other question? Good lecture. Shouldn't Africa invest generally in vaccine manufacturing? Well, yes, that's good. It's not finished. Finish the question.
Yes, sir. There's a question in the chat box.
Yeah, that's
okay, sir. Yes, sir.
The good lecture. Shouldn't Africa invest generally in vaccine manufacturing as opposed to now focusing on COVID-19, which might be all the way out? Of course, you gave the answer yourself. Africa is not isolating COVID-19 alone to get itself ready. For all we know, COVID-19, by God's grace, as you yourself pointed out, should soon go. But another pandemic, another virus will appear somewhere. So it is for Africa to get itself ready on the issue of vaccine production. Vaccine is an important component of public health. And a nation that does not manufacture its own vaccine cannot, you see, it means that when your children are born and they're going to school, the routine vaccination they should have, they are not having them. A lot of them are not having them. So Africa should invest in vaccine production, as you rightly pointed out. as opposed to isolating COVID-19. But COVID-19 is the present one we have to deal with now. We have to jump over this COVID-19 first of all. You know, Ebola was there. Ebola, fortunately, we managed to keep it in West Africa, although it surfaced again in Central Africa. We have Lassa fever, we have cholera, we have all of them. And we must, because of this high density of vaccine-preventable diseases, we must have the vaccine industry to be very strong in Africa. Which is the other one? We've done that. Any other question? Can you minimize?
Yes, sir. In the Q&A box, a CARTA fellow, Ernest Moya, is asking you about other things that we do for our vaccination. He's saying that free vaccination from other people like Gavi and UNICEF kills the market for vaccination production. And then he's thinking of how free commodities kills investment opportunities. What are your views about that, sir?
Besides African lacking vaccine production infrastructure, don't we think that free vaccination from government also kills the market for vaccination production? Do you think free commodities kill? Well, this is an argument that has gone on for quite some time. But you see, when you don't have the funds, and when you don't have the funds to meet the infrastructure, the heavy infrastructure that is required to put up the vaccine manufacturing infrastructure in your place, you have to deal with the free vaccine, at least as a temporary measure. I accept that the issue of the receiving free donation all the time is a very bad aspect of we Africans. And this is what the lecture was trying to say, that unless we as a people rise up to say, no, this is enough, that we can do it ourselves, we can fight for ourselves. But in the process, for us as a stopgap measure, we have to find out, we have to get this to make sure that people don't die while we reasonably, while we firmly now pursue the issues that would ensure that we have these structures. Africa has been too much in the doldrums. We have been too much in the doldrums, and we must fight. We must fight our way through in the committee of continents. And it is you who are at the continent of research now that should do it. And you have to fire yourself in that manner that you can do it. We have to make our areas habitable and hospitable to our people so that the best brains are not running away. If the best brains keep running away and going to exercise the value of their God's-given brain outside, then Africa will never make it. Look at what is happening in Nigeria now. A lot of the doctors that you train in the various medical schools, as you finish training them, they are doing one exam or the other. They want to run away. And because you succeed in training them well in Nigeria here, most of those exams, their pass rate, 70%, 80%, 90%. And they pass, they go away. Africa cannot develop in that manner. Africa must find ways and means in which it makes its own place hospitable. And this is why we talk to our politicians. Let us try and make this our continent, our various countries in the continent, lovable. Let our people love their countries. Let them want to stay. Let we who have access to funds not steal all the funds and disappear and make the place uninhabitable. You know, there's no light, no water, nothing. Life is so harsh. Then you have knowledge, you have skills, you run away. You have a family to feed, you have a wife to feed or a husband to feed, you run away. So these are the issues. And then in the meantime, what do we do? So I am optimistic. I believe that these matters have been shared, they have been flunked for so long and so strongly that a new generation of young ones will emerge within the context of Africa, within this continent of Africa, that will make Africa proud. It won't be tomorrow, it won't be there tomorrow, but it has to be a start. And what you are doing now at the University of Ibadan, by training these young researchers and firing them like this every time, you know, keep talking to them, we should get them somewhere. It's not to look also at malaria. Yes, okay. Yes, I agree with you. Open that on malaria. What did you say? Thank you. Now, the context of COVID-19 in terms of vaccine. Yes, as you know, vaccines are now, the WHO has approved the vaccine for malaria. And if there is a continent, well, Southeast Asia, yes, okay. But then if there is a continent that should be at the forefront of in trying to, again, get this properly in place so that we can utilize it, it should be our countries in Africa. There is none of us here now who wouldn't remember someone that has been lost from malaria. And even those of us who are alive over 50, 40, we've had such brushes with malaria. Some of them almost killing us, but we survived. So a vaccine for malaria will be a big, big plus for Africa, for Africa south of the Sahara. And we agree that that is another area that our attention must go to. Let us not be, the point was made at the briefing yesterday on COVID-19, which I watched till about 12:30 this morning. The point was made that let us not be deceived by the fact that, thank God, cross our fingers, particularly in Nigeria, the death rates from COVID-19 have not been so much. Let us not be deceived because the disease has not gone and we can turn a corner at any time. The variant can come. Now we're dealing with the Delta variant, which some people call Niger Delta variant. We're dealing with the Delta variant. Another variant can come that can overpower even the vaccines that we have, in which case we'll have problems. We are not quite sure the totality of why we are not having the disease as badly as others are having and why we're not dying as much. Maybe we're doing a number of things rightly. Maybe we have had a very high rate of community exposure and immunity is high. I don't know. I know that I had COVID and it was a terrible disease. I gathered that my colleague, Prof. Kimaro, is online. I want to take this opportunity to thank him. It was he and others who made sure. I think I want to thank you. I was glad when Professor Ugodu did say that it was when you were Vice Chancellor that they established this relationship, and it's been on since then. With people like you, people like Nika and all that, I have no doubt that this will continue to prosper. So I thank you all. My dean, as I call him, I thank you for making sure that I didn't die of COVID at the time I had COVID. Thank you. Any other question?
Thank you very much, sir. Professor Adewale has a comment. I think it's basically a comment in the question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Let me read out to you, sir. Thank you so much for the brilliant lecture. We got FEC to approve the biovaccine company in 2017. Nigeria owns 49% shares in the company, while May and Baker owns 51%. They prepared a blueprint for the manufacture with a timeline to commence production in 2021 with Gavi. It's uneconomical for the company to produce. We get vaccines for Gavi at almost free, 4.5 USD. The company wanted a long-term commitment for purchase of their product, which we could do for economic reasons. We could not do for economic reasons. Our relationship with Gavi ends in 2029. Thereafter, we shall have to procure vaccines at market price. Thank you, sir, for the information. There's a question from Daudu Busari, and he's asking about...
let me comment.
Professor Adewale's question. Okay, sir. Please go ahead, sir.
Isaac Adewole's contribution. This, our Honorable Minister of Health, we thank you. I'm aware when I was trying to read up for this lecture, I'm aware of this information that is there. And it only goes to show, you see, we have a lot of constraints in Africa. And unless we have repeat governments that are prepared to toe the line in a correct manner, irrespective of their political orientations. Political orientations cause a lot of problems in Africa generally, not just in Nigeria. That is, I come in party ABC, the other man comes in party YQZ, and there are various problems. Now, as you rightly pointed out, come 2029, when our relationship with Gavi is over, the problems will then come in. But even with that, we should be able to establish the infrastructure now that will now see us through. So I thank you, sir, for making that contribution. And then let's hope that, things begin to change from now. But I am a firm believer that there's so much pressure, there's so much unhappiness and dissatisfaction now that I believe that good things will begin to happen in Africa. Yes, which is the other question. Thank you, sir. Where is it?
Yes, sir. I think we'll just take 2 more questions.
Okay,
and the first one is already in the Q&A.
Africa seems to be begging for vaccines, but can we have equitable vaccine distribution without equitable contribution? How will we contribute now? What are we to contribute? We don't have. We have said that we don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the pharmaceutical companies that do this vaccine. A lot of them would not even agree to come to do them in Africa. But efforts are being made to try and get them in to establish the infrastructure that is required for them to come. We don't have an equitable contribution. We don't. Well, that's why we're hoping on new young ones to come and rise for your continent to find out what you can do to make sure that your continent rises and is also counted. Thank you, Prof, for presenting our representative to efforts and research to look for own solutions, including vaccines. I agree with you, sir. I agree completely. Yes, over to you.
Yes, sir. Finally, sir, would you like to?
Would I like to? Would you like to? I agree with I've done that one. It was saying something. Would you like to? It's cut off now, isn't it?
Professor Layemi, we can't hear you, sir.
Sorry?
I think he's having a little network problem.
Yeah, he's having some network difficulties.
Yeah, he's having some problem.
Who was speaking? Who was speaking?
Okay, thank you, Prof. Thank you. Professor Layemi, I think there's a network problem from your end. This is Funke Fayon speaking.
We can't hear.
Thank you very much, Professor Briggs. I think we still have one more question. Hopefully, Professor Layemi can join us. There is a question on the chat, on the question and answer.
I saw earlier, which one is that?
It talks about the fact that...
Is that the poverty one?
Yes, sir.
Holding key drivers to the inability of Africa to manufacture COVID-19 vaccines. In fact, I would say all vaccines. So, don't you think that the issue of patent would also be a good? Now, you're quite right, the issue of patent, the international community will not act with us in a fair manner until we are able to show that we are equal to them. In other words, when they give these patents and the regulations, the rules, the approvals for these manufacturers, unless we're able to show that we're equal to them, they will do one thing or the other in manners that will make it difficult for you to get to where you would. And that's why I call this in the shenanigans associated with the distributions of the COVID-19 vaccine. I agree with you that unless we prove ourselves, we will not be dealing, people won't be dealing with us on equal footings. Yes. No, some panelists can see the question. So it's not weird.
Thank you, Prof. Over to you, Professor Layemi.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm very sorry that I was cut off a little while ago. It was the instability of my internet here. So I will go ahead and just want to thank everybody who's been here. First of all, I think if this was a physical meeting, we'll probably all stand up and give Professor Briggs a very warm round of applause. But we can all do it in our own way, in our hearts, even in this virtual meeting. And I want to thank him very much. Hello. I want to thank him very much for the very, very excellent delivery. Every chart that has been sent on this topic has always has been to congratulate him on his excellent delivery. And I have no doubt that we all enjoyed the lecture. We have, he has set our mind thinking about a lot of things. I am very grateful for the opportunity that the CARTA Secretariat and the University of Ibadan has provided by providing this platform. And I thank you very much for being such a wonderful facilitator for this very lecture. And the program of CARTA, like Professor Briggs said, is a very important one, and we hope that it will produce. It's already been producing researchers of high quality in Africa, and will continue to produce. So we thank the CARTA program, the facilitators.
I think the network has acted up again, but I'll just continue from where Professor Layemi left off, just to extend gratitude to everyone who has contributed to the success of this public lecture. And I think I should also thank Professor Layemi and Dr. Fayeon. Dr. Fayeon has been the central coordinator for JAS 3, and she's done an excellent job of pulling everything together. And so it will be incomplete if we don't extend gratitude to her as well. So thank you all very much for attending. And once again, special thanks to my teacher, Professor Nimi Briggs, for delivering as usual. So I think we can now declare the lecture ended. Thank you all very much for attending.
Very much.
Bye.
Good. Okay,
Thank
we're
you,
done.
Prof. Yes, we are done. Thank you very much.